Good morning, good afternoon, good day, everyone, and welcome to this conversation hosted by the African Circular Economy Alliance and the Circular Economy Coalition for Latin America and the Caribbean, alongside UNA, focusing on taking a deeper dive into Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean and how they join forces for circularity and looking at common ideas for circularity. My name is James Mwangi. I'm Executive Director of the Dalberg Group and have for a long time been involved in these conversations about the circular economy and the critical role that it will play in shaping the future of a sustainable planet. Looking forward to today's conversation and looking forward to engaging with all of you in it. A few housekeeping rules to get us started. Firstly, there will be a button for translation. For those of you joining us in a range of languages, we'll have some presentations in a range of languages. There should be a button indicating translation options either at the bottom or at the top of your screen. There's a Q&A thread also available, and we urge that you input your questions there. We will try and cover them during the session and during the panel discussion with our eminent panelists. And where that doesn't work, we will make sure that we try and answer them in the thread itself. And finally, the session itself was being recorded and will be made publicly available thereafter. So once again, thank you all for joining us. And without any further ado, I think we will begin with a quick sense of who you are. This event is about a conversation between these two critical parts of the global economy that have so much to contribute to the conversation around circularity. It is a South-South dialogue in the purest sense of the word. And to assist in that and to understand who is part of the dialogue, I think we'll start by taking a quick poll to understand where everyone is joining in and what sector they're working in. So please do take a moment and fill in the poll. So the first question is, what region are you joining us from? Hopefully only one applies. And then what sector do you work in? And while many apply here, please do go ahead and make a choice of which ones best apply to you. I assume the returns are in. And if so, we will then begin our conversation today with some keynote comments. And here's the data. We have an interesting representation. So as expected, both Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean are well represented, but quite a few of you joining us from Europe, a few others from North America, and indeed some from Asia Pacific. Not surprising given the time of day and where it falls. But it's a truly global audience for this conversation, not just limited to the two regions concerned. And as we look at the sectors, again, a wide range. So again, this is a conversation across sectors, across geographies, and hopefully one that drives and supports collective action. I can think of no better place to start in that conversation than hearing from the shapers of policy and the voices of government and governance. And so for that, we will first hear from Minister Carlos Eduardo Correa, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development for the Republic of Colombia. He is unable to join us live today, but he very kindly recorded a message that we'll play now. And then we will thereafter hear from someone else.
Un saludo muy especial a todos y todas. Quiero comenzar el programa de las Naciones Unidas para el Medio Ambiente por su apoyo político y técnico que permitió la coordinación de este importante encuentro entre la Alianza de Economía Circular de África y la Coalición de Economía Circular de América Latina y el Caribe. Estamos seguros que este encuentro es el inicio de una alianza entre estas dos regiones, con el fin de promover la transición de una economía lineal a un modelo de economía circular, siendo este un vehículo para contribuir al cumplimiento de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, al Acuerdo de París y las metas establecidas en las contribuciones nacionalmente determinadas, las NDC. Ahora bien, es importante resaltar que quienes nos encontramos reunidos en este Foro Mundial de Economía Circular tenemos la plena convicción de que la pandemia nos ha llevado a centrar muchas de nuestras discusiones regionales e internacionales en la importancia de impulsar un nuevo modelo de desarrollo. Un nuevo modelo enfocado en la circularidad, que haga frente a los desafíos mundiales como el cambio climático, la contaminación y la pérdida de biodiversidad. Este modelo no solo implica un trabajo enfocado en los cambios de patrones de consumo y de producción sostenible, sino que requiere de acciones contundentes que nos permitan incrementar la eficiencia en el uso de materiales, en el uso de agua y energía, teniendo en cuenta la capacidad de recuperación de los ecosistemas y el uso circular de los flujos de materiales, maximizando así su valor agregado y su vida útil. Por lo tanto, desde la Coalición de Economía Circular para América Latina y el Caribe, nos hemos trazado como objetivo implementar un enfoque de economía circular mediante el trabajo colaborativo. Un trabajo colaborativo entre gobiernos, entre empresas y toda la sociedad en su conjunto. Es así que para lograr este objetivo comenzamos trabajando en la construcción de una visión común. Una visión que nos permitirá definir el camino que desde la región nos debemos trazar para lograr la transición de este modelo. En este sentido, y resaltando que la implementación de este modelo debe responder a unas dinámicas propias de los países y de las regiones, es que vemos con buenos ojos esta unión con la Alianza de Economía Circular de África, puesto que compartimos elementos similares como nuestra enorme biodiversidad. Compartimos elementos como la riqueza de nuestros recursos naturales y así también como los conocimientos ancestrales que son raíces importantes de la economía circular. Asimismo, tenemos en común que ambos continentes contamos con una población muy joven, una población dinámica con mucho potencial de innovación y de emprendimiento, lo cual se convierte en un vehículo importante para impulsar nuestras estrategias de educación y de cultura ciudadana. Que además nos permita que nuestros jóvenes se apropien de su rol en la implementación de este nuevo modelo económico, un nuevo modelo económico, social, político y ambiental. Por último, en nombre de los otros países miembros y socios estratégicos de la Alianza, nos complace manifestar la satisfacción de haber podido llevar a cabo este evento que marca el inicio de la colaboración entre nuestras dos regiones y sus países. Estamos convencidos que hay mucho potencial de aprendizaje mutuo y de colaboración para acelerar la implementación de enfoques circulares. Muchas gracias.
While he cannot hear us, Minister Correa, for his a reminder to all of you that there is, I'm seeing some comments in the thread, that there is a translation button on the screen for most people joining on Zoom. And through that, you can access translation in the language of your choosing or preference. With that said, I'll now turn to another champion for the circular economy and circularity more broadly, Minister Jean-Darc Mujawamariya of Rwanda, Minister of Environment of Rwanda, to share her remarks and reflections as a long-standing champion of this agenda on the continent and globally. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, dear participants. African countries have been facing multifaceted issues such as poverty, poor infrastructure, and unemployment, among other factors that have hindered economic growth. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated these, as most of these countries do not have the necessary buffers to withstand the induced shocks. Governments and international community are now making concerted efforts to alleviate the immediate consequences of health and socio-economic impacts, while continuing with their various development agenda. However, these development efforts must be sustainable, which means a just transition to low carbon and climate resilient development. Indeed, for a sustainable recovery, we must ensure that recovery packages support green jobs creation for our growing population and the integration of vulnerable workers in circular economy sectors like waste management. Supporting climate compatible development in Africa means that recovery packages must enable the dissemination of clean technologies like renewable energy and climate smart agriculture, while also building the adaptive capacity of African countries to deal with the impact of a changing climate. In line with this, the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, AMSEN, is currently leading the development of the Africa Green Stimulus Program, an innovative initiative to support the continent's recovery response in a sustainable manner. Some of the areas of focus for the program include improving chemicals and waste management through a circular economy approach, enhancing climate action and conserving biodiversity, and combating illegal wildlife trade. The AGSP will provide rapid response in support of key economic sectors hardest hit by the pandemic, such as ecotourism and the bioeconomy. It will also enhance political ambition and help in scaling up the implementation of existing and new programs through financial resource mobilization, technical and capacity building support in support of green recovery of Africa. ACEA's mission and opportunities for the CE in Africa, which means the circular economy. The concept of circular economy has gained prominence in the era of sustainable development goals and the Paris Agreement on climate change as a model for sustainable production and consumption, in which the productive use of natural resources and materials is optimized. In particular, SDG 12 is about decoupling environmental degradation from economic growth. In a circular economy, products are designed to stay in use for as long as possible. Components are easily repairable, dismantleable, and modular to maximize their circulation in the economy. Once they reach the end of their useful life, products are dismantled and their parts refurbished to cycle back as secondary raw materials for remanufacturing. Services that enhance resource efficiency, such as those of the sharing economy, also follow Sacral principles. Efficient use of materials means that production and consumption create the smallest amount of waste and pollution. As such, the economy-wide adoption of Sacral practices could help reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 45%. The concept of circularity is not new in Africa, where customs have favored Sacral practices such as permaculture, community sharing, and the use of bio-based materials for centuries. More recently, the emergence of economic activities centered around the repair, refurbishment, and recycling of end-of-life products and growing access to renewable energy have contributed to expanding Sacral systems in the continent. Nonetheless, Sacral economy has not yet become a solid contributor to national development because practices have remained largely in the informal sector. To push for a Sacral economy transition within the African continent, the Africa Sacral Economy Alliance was conceived in 2016 during the World Economic Forum on Africa in Kigali and formally launched at COP23 in Bonn in 2018. The Alliance is a government-led coalition of African nations with a mission to spur Africa's transformation into a Sacral economy that delivers economic growth, jobs, and positive environmental outcomes. It intends to achieve its goal by serving as a platform that supports the transition to a Sacral economy at the national, regional, and continental levels through targeted interventions. These include policy support and advisory, leadership and advocacy, and support for scaling Sacral economy businesses and projects. The Alliance was founded by Rwanda, Nigeria, and South Africa, and currently has 8 country members. Since its creation, the Alliance has collaborated with strategic partners interested in driving forward its agenda on the continent. These partners include the World Economic Forum, African Development Bank, UN Environment Programme, Government of Finland, and the Platform for Accelerating the Sacral Economy. The Alliance currently has a secretariat hosted at the African Development Bank that supports its activities with funding from the World Economic Forum and the Danish International Development Agency. On the importance of cooperation, Gatere South Exchange, one of the aims of this event is to promote and encourage South-South and international cooperation to promote the Sacral economy. As it will be noted, there are significant commonalities between Africa and the Latin American and Caribbean regions. For instance, earlier this month, Rwanda and Peru at UN conference in Geneva, the plan for a legally binding international treaty to reduce plastic waste. In our quest to bounce back effectively post-COVID and continue on the path of sustainable development, we need to work collaboratively. This includes coordination to enhance knowledge and access to science, technology, and innovation. As governments, we also need to actively work to create and implement policies and regulations that will create an enabling environment for circular economy within our regions. I encourage all of us to set up platforms for sharing best practices and the lesson learned in the process. There is also a room for us as regions to build global partnerships for sustainable development and, in this case, promote a circular economy. An example of such partnerships is the Global Alliance on Circular Economy and Resource Efficiency, GACHERE. Rwanda, Nigeria, and South Africa have already joined the Global Alliance. These partnerships will afford us the opportunity to mobilize and share knowledge, expertise, technology, and financial resources to support the transition to a circular economy within our region. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for that extensive view of all of the work that has gone on to date, but more excitingly, some of these new efforts to broaden the alliance and broaden the thinking. It could not be more timely given the moment we are in, both in these regions, but then more globally as well. With that, let us turn now to a conversation with our panelists. And you've already heard, and I will not belabor the point, but you've heard from the two ministers quite a bit about what's happening in these regions and what they have in common. Highly informal regional economies, as high as 80% informality in Africa, as high as 70% in Latin America and the Caribbean, and economies often dominated by small and informal business. A youthful population, minimal contributions to the pollution and emission legacies that are really complicating the world's efforts to maintain, to stay below 2 degrees or even 1.5 degrees beyond pre-industrial levels, so minimal historical contributions. And yet hard hit, likely to be very hard hit, both by the effects of climate change, which are already impacting these regions more than any other places in the world, or as much as any other place in the world. As well as, and perhaps kind of telling as a precursor, both regions are facing a long road of recovery from a very difficult economic period at present, with COVID having led to Africa's first recession in over 25 years, and having hit Latin America hardest of all regions, Latin America and the Caribbean hardest of all regions in the world. With a more than 6% shrinkage of the economy in the past year. So the context is pressing and it demands action. But at the same time, both regions do have a legacy and a tradition to draw upon, and deep reserves of both natural assets as well as human capital. And to begin there, I wanted to call upon our first panelist, Professor Kenneth Amaechi of the university, who's a chair in business and sustainable development at the University of Edinburgh, and is a leading scholar on sustainable business and finance, to speak to some of the contextual aspects of this. It sometimes behooves us to be reminded that the concept of circularity is already deeply embedded in the way that cultures and traditions in Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean and elsewhere have operated. So Professor Amaechi, perhaps you can share some reflections from your work on how this has manifested, particularly in Africa.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's been a pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here with you and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or evening, where you are. I was in a lecture yesterday, and a student mentioned that circular economy is an idea from the global north that is being mainstreamed to the global south. I paused for a while, thought about it, and said, but that's not completely true. The name circular economy, or the title, might be a Western construct, but the practice is not. And I can see a lot of African practices that would reflect circularity thinking, because if you put it that way. And I think many of us here from Africa or Latin America might also relate to some of the practices in a different context that would signal that the idea of circularity is not new per se. What is rather new and odd is the linear production process we inherited through neoclassical economic capitalism. That's the new bit. And it came and disrupted and positioned itself as a superior way of production. But what is happening now that it's clear to us all that the linear model does not work. The linear model is unsustainable. And at best, it is contributing to overconsumption and some of the negative impacts we can relate to today. But the question might be for me then is, what examples do I have? I come from a part of Nigeria, from the southeast Nigeria. And we have a plant, the palm tree, just to use it as an example. There is nothing about the palm tree that is wasted. So if the palm frond becomes the broom, right? You have the palm oil, you have the palm kernel. At some point, part of that process also becomes the firewood for cooking. So it's completely utilized. There's nothing in the palm tree that is wasted in that sense. You can also think about how we engage with animal production and consumption. Here in the West, I've seen a lot of things say, well, for example, if it's a chicken or a goat, some parts that kind of disappear because people don't like them, right? But literally in Africa, everything is consumed. You know, it has a purpose. There is a function. Even when it's not consumed, it might also be playing some kind of traditional roles or sacrificial roles, right? So in that case, it still has a value. Nothing is wasted. We can also relate to our farming practices, where the whole idea of crop rotation or leaving some lands fallow for a while and coming back and making sure everything in that is preserved. So, and because also we have this sense of abundance, so it's not a problem, so to speak. And we're able to spend more time. And in Africa, we have time, right? So we don't work with the clock time, because the clock time is also part and parcel of the Western production process, whereby you're expected to produce certain things within a certain time frame. And if you don't meet that time frame, then you're lacking in performance. Whereas in African context, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best, but what I'm saying is that the idea of circularity and the pressures that may come from it through the mechanistic way of existing and production might not necessarily be endemic at the point in time. Yeah. So the other thing also to reflect on, and I've always found it as a puzzle, why is it that we don't have a lot of waste in rural areas in Africa? But once you step out of the rural areas and go to the urban areas, you encounter a lot of waste, which again points to me that in rural areas in Africa, in many African countries, we find ways of designing how we live and also the kind of waste that we produce. And most of the things we use are biodegradable, if you look at it. So whether we are looking at food packaging, for example, in Nigeria, there is this famous rice, they call it the Ofada rice, right? And you can only enjoy it when it is wrapped with some kind of leaves and stuff like that. And if you go to the urban area, sometimes they sell them in plastic containers and they sort of lose their taste. But the idea of plastics as a packaging, as a means to package it is again a function of maybe the convenience of the city or people who are trying to modernize. And in the process of trying to modernize, they step. Sorry,
yeah, let me pick up there because I do want to broaden the conversation a little bit. And you've touched on two things that I think are useful. That historical context, as well as a difference in how materials are used in the rural and in the urban context, and to some extent, the greater adoption of linearity in urban settings. I did want to, in the spirit of broadening the conversation, turn to you, Wanjiro Aidaka. You've been, over the years, a leading entrepreneur on the frontiers of circularity, and you've had to both reconcile historical models with bringing new products to market, as well as engaging a younger generation of folks on the continent in the circular economy agenda. Can you offer any reflections, maybe building on the start that Professor Amaechi has provided us?
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks, Prof. I was really smiling hard. In my hand, I have coconut. It was a coconut. So you can see the inside has been taken out and all the oil and the flesh and the milk. And this is what you get, which is now a container. This is used predominantly in the Mijikenda community at the coast. And they use this for drinking water, scooping water, or for drinking porridge. They did not need plastic cups for that. It's a very, very traditional product, which is now very green, very circular. In my hand, I'm holding our baobab pod, which has been cut in half. We know the seed, we know baobab is a fruit of life. But to James's point, moving on, so I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Fun Kids. We design and manufacture furniture for children. And now we've launched fun homes for adults as well within the building industry. And if you look at our agricultural waste, right? In my hand, this is rice husks mixed with a lot of other agro waste to build a building board. You can see the thickness of it. And to the other side, we've used bamboo to laminate it. These are samples we work with where we're innovating. And when we talk about creating jobs that are circular, that are green using low tech, I get fascinated by the circular economy notion. We all know it did not start today. And maybe we need to put it in a different language for us to understand. We had what was called hand-me-downs. You wore the clothes that your older sibling, male or female, had. You didn't get new clothes really. It was, it was unheard of. As a business, Fun Kids, what we have is something called a buyback option from a long time ago. We're 11 years into business, and any customer whose baby outgrows a product comes back, sells it back, gets the next bed. Why? We are many, a large continent, many children. What are you gonna do? But we just didn't waste. We didn't waste at all, right? When we look at, again, the stuff that's coming secondhand, this is waste from big businesses, big factories, like textiles. It's really messing up our rivers and everything. What we do, we take the textile waste, because it's really cheap, it's bad, but it's cheap. Then we turn it into furniture, which we need. So sometimes I get really, really perplexed by the linear model, which we're talking about, that made us feel inferior in how we manufactured or made a product. Really, manufacturing is making product at the end of the day, or design for purpose, right? And if you look at the solutions we had, they did make sense to us, absolutely made sense. This in my hand, again, was for wine, off the tree, right? Absolutely beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. But because it was made by hand using low tech, somehow it just doesn't make sense to be called a good product. We talked about urban markets. I did a couple of notes and said, maybe because the green stuff is not glitzy, maybe the stuff that's made by hand using low tech is not glitzy or glamorous, then we then get convinced it's not good for us. And we need to say that that's not the case. Just because it's shiny or looking perceived modern doesn't mean it's the way. So yeah, James, this is for me such a close subject to my heart. I believe in technology as an enabler of things, but we have a lot of technology waste. We have a lot of e-waste on the continent of Africa. And what we're saying is, what do we do? So we're turning e-waste into product, into furniture, wood waste, fabric waste, anything that we're seeing as waste, we're cycling it. But by doing that, we're creating what are called the green jobs. It's not, again, terminology that should be thrown around at presentations. it's the reality. And the more we do this, the more we'll advance as a continent using low tech, which is what we have. We don't have, power lines everywhere, but we have amazing crafts to make products that we need, not products that are waste. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wanjiru, for that. I will take issue with something you said. You talked about, going low tech, but what you described sounded like really cutting edge innovation applied to simplifying things. So it's not low tech per se, it is applied technology to the context and the reality that we find ourselves in.
Absolutely.
Gonzalo Munoz, I'll turn to you now because you wear three very interesting hats. On one level, you yourself are a pioneer in the circular economy through your work with Triciclos. You've been a champion of responsible business through the B-Lab movement. And importantly, you have a very rich sense of the stakes we are facing right now through your role as a high-level champion for climate for the United Nations. And these three things and how they come together within this agenda are really interesting. And it would be fantastic to get your reflections as a champion from COP25 onwards. What are the opportunities it offers for, what does circular economy mean for climate change? And what are the examples that really stand out to you from Latin America and the Caribbean of how it's playing this role?
Well, thanks so much, James. Of course, thanks also to the World Circular Economy Forum. It's great to see both Wanjiru and Professor Kenneth. It's great to have also this conversation trying to align the South-South collaboration. I think this is absolutely brilliant, and I celebrate every single example that Wanjiru just brought, because as you said, it's not only about high tech, it's about how do we position innovation in a way that we solve the most dramatic and most urgent topics that we need to solve very rapidly. So as you know, and as Wanjiru and Professor, I mean, I can be speaking about this the whole day and probably month, right? But we know that there's a very important connection when we talk about the shift to a circular economy and achieving the climate goals that are agreed by the international community, and how much of that was probably not very well considered in the past, and now it's absolutely embedded. Let's think first about greenhouse gas emissions. The problem that we're facing when it comes to deploying nature, but then also increasing the amounts of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere is all about linearity. It's all about taking a resource that is in nature, then producing an element that is now energy, but then creating a waste that many cases is about throwing those carbon molecules into the atmosphere, but also at the same time generating water streams that are polluted and creating contamination when it comes to solid waste at the same time. So if you see, everything that is related to circular economy is climate related topics. So it's an economy that works maintaining the elements in the highest possible value, but also regenerating ecosystem. So the connection is evident. It would be like it would be interesting to understand why wasn't that clear in the initial days when we started talking about tackling the climate crisis. And now we're seeing a lot of momentum, like more companies, more cities, more universities combining the efforts to impact positively in the ambition and the action coming from the national governments and the multilateral system. Most of that is being done through a circular economy mindset. One very critical lesson that I would like to bring from Latin America is related to the importance and the power of starting with the right narrative. Just changing, this is something that many ministries are doing in Latin America, just changing the name of the waste management department, sometimes at the environmental ministry, to a circular economy department that is opening a lot of opportunity, and many more ministries and agencies that at the governmental level are now starting to develop tools to embrace circular economy at the economy, industry, mining, agriculture, infrastructure, and of course energy again, right? So we are seeing how that is, as a first element, positioning the topic and talking about it and changing the logic of waste as something that is acceptable, to circular economy as something that is mobilizing all of us, is also helping industries and the business sector to move a lot. And in that aspect, what we're seeing is plastics and let's say single-use plastic is a great entry point, where we're seeing also really great work allowing the positioning of the idea that no business player and no country can solve this problem alone. We need much more stronger public-private partnership, and plastic as a topic is helping a lot to promote what to do in that sense. Also because that connects to the financial system. We need to ensure that the right kind of finance is enabling this transition. And it's so riskier. Any financial tool that is based on a linear model, circularity definitely reduces the financial risk. So this agenda that is connected from, let's say, the national government to also create the narrative that is promoting every agency and at the governmental level to move ahead, then is promoting this narrative and action on the business sector. Then I will just refer to how much is it also promoting green skills, but not only in the young population, probably most of the young population. Young people in Latin America, at least, and I would say worldwide, is now demanding and rewarding circular models. They are doing it through vote, through purchase power, and of course with the use of their voice and talent. So let's consider that as well. So I'll stop here, James, but happy to go deeper into any of these topics or anything else.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you, Gonzalo. And you know, I'll call out something you said at the end there, because I think it's really powerful. I remind people we will never care as little as a planet about climate change as we do today, right? Every day from now on, it'll matter more and more. And the younger generation are going to be shaping their political and consumption preferences based on climate smart and sustainable methods. And that's a message both to the small entrepreneur as well as to the largest multinational or the largest policymaker. That's a good segue to actually getting a little bit practical. And you know, wanted to actually invite into the room a little bit two concrete examples of how this is playing out. We have two ventures that I think we wanted to showcase, and so we'll take a moment just to look at them, and then we will have the actual entrepreneurs share a little bit of some of what they're dealing with and trying to get done right after we learn a bit about their enterprises. So with that, I'll pause and we'll take a few minutes to see two actual circular economy enterprises in action.
I'm Samarigo, founder and CEO of Safiorganics. Where we are is Moya, Gurubani, about 100 kilometers from Nairobi. What we simply do, we convert organic waste from the farmers into fertilizer using technology and community production units, which can be established in every agricultural community with agricultural waste. We purchase the rice husk from the farmers. Once it is with us, we carbonize it. Once we carbonize, we do the storage where we allow regrowth of microorganisms. We do the milling, then mixing with our special formula. After the packaging and the weighing, we take it to the market. If you do a business to make only profits, to me, it is not satisfying. We have at our heart the customer. So for everything the employees do, they do it to make sure that the customer gets the best. We increase the yields for the farmers by up to 30%, which means that more food will be available for the market, more food will be available for people to consume. To the farmers, when we buy from the farmers, we are giving them an extra income for their farm. So whatever used to be a waste to them is no longer a waste. When I meet a farmer who will tell me that I did have an increase in yield, it makes me feel satisfied and gives me the motivation actually to work more to see that the farmer gets a better product for the farm in the next season. We have sustainable goals that we really work every day to achieve. We sequester an equivalent of 1.5 tons for every acre of land our product is used every season. And as an additional benefit, we reduce the amount of water needed for irrigation by up to 30%. And as we are restoring the soil fertility, it means we have more plants growing, more vegetative cover. So these things makes me feel that I'm contributing to the whole humanity rather than just my own gain.
Soy Juan Pedro Paz, director de Systemquare. Estamos ubicados en Maroñas. Es una curtiembre que fue fundada en 1876 por mi bisabuelo. Son productos curtidos con taninos vegetales que no presentan cromo y eso se dedica específicamente al artesanato actual, materas, mates y afines. Actualmente los cueros que recibimos son todos de origen frigorífico, que nos da una tranquilidad por la trazabilidad de la materia prima y tener un control sanitario sobre el material que llega. El producto empieza en la máquina de dividir, se depilan, se desgrasan, pasa por una máquina específica donde se hacen 2 capas por el espesor que nosotros manejamos para el curtido. El descarne, que es la parte más baja, no logra tener un espesor ideal para el curtido y se aprovecha para los artículos caninos. Lo sometemos después a un sistema de lavado, estabilización de la proteína, retiramos algo de cal, lo desinfectamos con agua oxigenada, hacemos una desinfección importante para mantener la proteína lo más pura posible. Luego de tener la parte húmeda, procesar esto, lo llevamos a la planta de elaboración, donde se clasifican diferentes medidas aprovechando espesores y tamaños. Los recortes se muelen y se hacen parte también como snack, puede ser hamburguesas o pequeños moldes, y después hacemos varias medidas de huesos y artículos varios. Después lo trasladamos a un sistema de secado controlado de temperatura y humedad hasta lograr una estabilización y una dureza ideal para poderlo manejar para su entrega al cliente. Este subproducto que se descartaba por no poderlo negociar en tiempo y forma, y eso termina en un basurero, confinamiento, y esto genera ambientalmente un problema y aparte un costo para la empresa. Este proyecto lo que hace es dejar de tirar esto, casi el 100% de lo que tenemos. El apoyo BioValor fue fundamental para nosotros por la escala que tenemos. Al tener una empresa muy pequeña, es muy difícil conseguir créditos para financiar este tipo de emprendimientos. Y si no fuera por ellos, hoy este proyecto no estaría.
So, building up on very concrete examples from Uruguay and from Kenya, I want to turn to the entrepreneurs, and perhaps starting with Ms. Esther Zaha of Systemquare. What are the big challenges? Can you maybe characterize a big challenge or opportunity that you see, and then we'll come back. There's an additional question that's broader for the panelists, but I wanted to hear from each of you, Esther and Samuel, about some of the challenges facing your businesses or the opportunities to grow these businesses.
Well, hello, James. Hello, everybody, and it's a pleasure to participate in this discussion. We are here with Leonardo Marquez from Systemquare Tannery, who's also available in the Zoom and to chat with you. As you saw in the video, we believe that the way to encourage similar investments in other SMEs in the region is through public-private alliances, no? As in this case, with System Quer and the Rwandan government project called BioValor, no? It is key to have these public-private alliances, especially because investing in a new production line for a product such as these bone treats for dogs, which were not manufactured locally until this point, bears many risks for an SME, no? And one way to mitigate these risks for System Quer was to embark on the project jointly, no? Sharing the investment expenses and with the technical support of BioValor technicians. So, and also at the public policy level, we see that this has many benefits beyond the specific case of System Quer, no? Because we empower companies that want to produce in a more sustainable way, and at the same time, we also inspire others to follow their path by showcasing real examples with real SMEs doing innovation. So I think that's really the challenge, to encourage these public-private alliances and to empower businesses such as System Quer to engage in circular economy practices.
So partnership at the core of this and supporting businesses in overcoming some of those early stage risks. Samuel, does it resonate? Does something else play out for you in the Safiorganics instance from what you've heard from Esther and the BioValor and System Quer example?
Yeah, definitely one of the most or the key parts is with innovation, with circular economy comes innovation. And with innovation, sometimes we bring things that didn't exist previously in the market. So just to give an example, when we started producing our fertilizer as an organic fertilizer, there was no standard that could be used to gauge us in terms of, because we only had the manure and the synthetic fertilizers as the standards in the country. So it really took us a while, about 18 months, to get a standard established. So one of the things that I see is that policies and policymakers should be key in terms of partnering with innovators in terms of bringing circular economy, all fast-tracking circular economy implementation.
Thank you, Samuel. Both you and Esther, and in the videos, the role of policy has been clear. Another question that came up in the thread that I think is co-equal in some ways with policy is the question of financing. And how does circularity actually and circular economy actually lead to a different approach to financing or raising the capital needed to accelerate businesses? And Gonzalo, I want to turn to you for your reflections on this. And is there an opportunity here? Is there a particular challenge around accessing capital in this space, or an opportunity?
I would say it's an opportunity. It's not evident in terms of what if we base our way of approaching the problem and the opportunity based on the experience. Of course, the financial mechanisms are mostly still or historically based on linear systems, but that is changing and changing really, really rapidly. And let me refer to certain data. Only let's say 2 years ago, September 23rd, 2019, we launched the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance as one of the biggest coalitions of financial institutions positioning towards the net zero by 2050 world that we require. At that time, we launched it with $2 trillion committed from mostly pension funds from the global north. Today, we have more than $90 trillion US dollars committed to that net zero and resilient world by 2050, from Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance up to $9 trillion. Then net zero asset managers, people that are looking for where to position their money and create the portfolio that is all related to what we're talking about. That represents in this moment more than $43 trillion. Then we have the Banks Alliance for Net Zero, more than 53 banks, commercial banks, that are changing all of their narrative. They are training their people, and that was launched from April to today. $37 trillion. And last week, we launched the Net Zero Insurance Alliance. So all of this is changing so rapidly. So the financial sector is now needing this type of solutions for de-investing from all of those activities that have created the problem to one that is definitely creating the solutions that we require. This will require a lot of resilience for ourselves as well. This is not something that's going to happen from night to day. We will have to be resilient. So I celebrate Esther and Samuel for what they're doing. And of course, Wanjira, all of us as entrepreneurs that are now positioning the solutions, we have to be more vocal and push for these initiatives to scale and be capable of adapting ourselves also to bring the right solutions to a market that is also evolving, right? It's not simple, but it's urgent. You're mute, James.
Thank you. The most famous.
If you want me, I can keep moderating. So you let me know.
The most famous words in the Zoom era.
Right.
You are on mute. The capital is coming to the party. People are understanding the dimensions of risk and pivoting accordingly. Professor Amechi, what about the world of the university and preparing the next generation of operators and professionals, the younger generation of business people, engineers, architects, and so on, who will need to step into this pool of capital and this opportunity? What work is going on there? What work still needs to be done?
It's important to point out also that the business schools are, have been part of the problem in terms of promoting the shareholder model. So now is our time to redeem our image. So the academic curriculum or curricula is changing in many ways. In my university, at the University of Edinburgh, there have been a lot of work around circular economy, and the university as a whole has seen it as an opportunity to draw interdisciplinary skills and competencies on board. So you have people from engineering, chemistry, up to economics, politics, as well as philosophy and the business school. So it's becoming mainstream, but it's also tied into the broader agenda of sustainability, because we also run the risk of compartmentalization, where people see circular economy as something different from sustainability or from impact investing or the other many things we talk about, the green economy and the blue economy, depending on how far you want to stretch it. So it is very much central in that sense. But also one thing we are trying to emphasize, especially from the global north perspective, is not to be, how will I put it, oblivious of the dangers inherent in the circular economy thinking and practice, because it's also political. So why is the West, why is the global north very much interested in circular economy? On one hand, one can argue that, yes, it's all about protecting the environment, increasing more in terms of how the resources are used. But there are also, on the other hand, winners and losers. Who are those that will lose from this? And if the global south, including Africa, Latin America, because Africa is kind of resource rich. So when the Western world extract raw materials from Africa, they want those raw materials to go further in their system. But in doing so, they're also limiting the demand for some of the things coming from the global south. So we also need to be careful in that sense to ensure that there is equity in the whole agenda. And that's one of the things we also try to do through the academia and to promote the critical approach to circular economy and not just see it as a very smooth and benign space, because there are always losers and winners in that case. So, but there are many other things that can come into place in terms of even setting up commercialization of innovation from the university. And there's been a lot of studies that have shown that venture capitalists are beginning to turn toward the green issues. So there is money there. It's a question of coming up with the right innovation that would make the owners of the finance to part with them to support those businesses. And I saw a comment on the chat that was talking about scale. As much as possible, I mean, I talked about secular practices in Africa, but it's not about romanticization of these practices or being nostalgic about them, but also thinking about how we can mainstream scale. At the University of Edinburgh, I run a center called Scaling Business in Africa, and we came up with that name for a purpose. So it's not just about the man and his dog kind of business, the micro entrepreneurs, the chickens, the hens. No, I mean, we can do more than that. So scale is also important. How can we make sure that the circular economy thinking and the circularity perspective from Africa is mainstream and globalized?
you make a very powerful point that I think offers an interesting segue, in that for, in as much as Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa have not played a bigger role in the over-industrialized linear models, they are natural resource producers that often are at the beginning of these chains. And the circular economy will give with one hand, but may take with another. And we need to think about what are the big structural adjustments we need to make to our economy to prepare for a more circular world. And that speaks, I think, Shiro, to where I wanted to come to with you, which is this has implications for the type of work, the types of roles that young people are stepping into, and the types of designs of enterprises that we will need to see. Can we actually scale? And are the people and capacities and technologies and demand available for us to scale in a circular way?
Thanks, James. Absolutely. I love what Prof has said. However, if you did look at the resources we have, we don't even use a fraction of them for ourselves. So I would start there and say, it's okay. We can even close and say, let's use them for ourselves, because we still have extremely poor housing, for example. We don't even have schools for our children. We need to be building affordable, sustainable schools using the circular economy model. Again, I'll just show, for the purpose of those who've not been here, a board we've innovated using agricultural waste through and through. And this is for the building industry. If you look at the domino effect from a socio-economic standpoint of what this board has potential to do in creating jobs, affordable homes, affordable schools, it's huge. Wouldn't even worry about resourcing leaving the country, the continent. If you look at from low tech to high tech, for example, in Kenya, we have 5G. Technology-wise, we are fine, we're really good. But the question is, what are we doing with the technology we have on the high tech side and the low tech to literally scale and create these jobs? If we took, for example, and said we'll build a model community center or village, as we call them, housing, schools, etc., using everything we have here, the jobs, James, the jobs would be astronomical. Forget the fashion industry, the food industry, everything. Design is for people. Okay, look at everything we're wearing. I mean, buttons, we don't even manufacture buttons in Kenya. If we took plastic that's done from somewhere else and made buttons out of plastic, sockets that we'll use, switches for the same technologies, we don't even make those here. That's using plastic. I don't think we need to panic as much about whether we can create jobs. We just literally need the partnerships I said here. It's not always about money. Somebody has waste somewhere they're sitting and are hoarding. Give us the waste, okay? Give us the expertise, because we have the need and we'll create these jobs.
I'm very sorely tempted to just listen to this conversation for the rest of the day, but I do know already that some of the panelists have had are approaching the end of their times, and we are approaching the end of our time slot. So I wanted to invite for a conversation on the way forward, or for some remarks on the way forward, Dr. Anthony Nyong and Ms. Adriana Zacarias-Farah from the ACEA and Latin America Sacral Economy Coalition, together, variously, respectively, to maybe offer some closing remarks in turn. But before I do that, I did want to thank all of our panelists, our entrepreneurs, and the very rich thread of comments. Someone has asked whether those comments would be available, because there's almost an entire parallel dialogue that's happening there, very much in this new Zoom mediated way that we're having collective conversations. So keep that going. And then I will invite firstly Dr. Nyong and then Ms. Farah to render some remarks on the way forward and to close us out.
Yeah, sorry, James, I was waiting for you to say the popular word. I'm on mute, like you said. As I was waiting for you to say the most popular word is Zoom. You are on mute. It really was.
Well done.
Thank you so very much, distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen, members of the audience. I can see my good friend, Professor Meshi, Professor Onoha, and other colleagues. Thanks so very much for this opportunity. And I wish to thank you immensely for joining our regional dialogue between the African Circular Economy Alliance and the Latin American and Caribbean Circular Economy Coalition today. There might be thousands of kilometers that separate our regions, but one thing stands clear. We come from continents that with great potential for scaling circularity, and I sincerely hope that today will mark the beginning of a rich collaboration between the Africa Circular Economy Alliance and the Latin American and Caribbean Circular Economy Coalition today. The particularities of our regions, which were highlighted by our panelists, necessitate special interventions and joint efforts in order to achieve our common objectives. In this regard, the African Development Bank and the Global Center on Adaptation have partnered to launch the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, a $25 billion transformative program to build the continent's resilient development pathways, including through fostering circular economy solutions within the 4 program pillars, namely climate smart digital technologies for agriculture and food security, African Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator, empowering youth for entrepreneurship and job creation in climate adaptation and resilience, and innovative financial initiatives for Africa. Through continental coalitions such as the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, these efforts can be leveraged to bring to scale many sustainable solutions from our young entrepreneurs, such as the one I've heard today, Samuel Rigo, CEO of Safiorganics, who shared with us how his business of organic fertilizers is helping sustainable farming in Kenya. The issue of financing for circularity, which has been highlighted by our panelists today, is a critical one that must be addressed to ensure the successful implementation of circular economy solutions in Africa. I commend the government of Finland and the Nordic Development Fund for contributing resources for the African Circular Economy Facility at the African Development Bank to provide grants to innovative startups and SMEs. I have no doubt that Africa's youth will be a game changer for the circular economy. Can you imagine that Africa has a median age of 17.9 years? This will either be an asset or it will be a liability. But I believe that if we work well, we turn this into an asset. And having the world's fastest growing population, which is anticipated to reach 2.4 billion people by 2050, Africa is also the continent where most of its infrastructure is yet to be built. There's an opportunity to build resilient systems that align with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Goal and provide jobs for the youth. The Youth Empowerment Pillar under the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program will leverage circular economy solutions from the Africa Circular Economy Alliance partners and other facilities dedicated to the youth, such as the Youth and Entrepreneurship Innovation Fund of the African Development Bank to scale up skills and financial support for youth-led startups and help countries implement reforms that support youth creation. Let me make this announcement here. I don't know if it has already been made, that between the African Development Bank and the Global Center on Adaptation, we have launched an initiative that will grant up to $100,000 to 10 youth-led enterprises. The advert is on. Winners will be selected by COP. Our goal is to move people from just the startups, take them across the valley of death, and put them at a position that can be commercially viable. Everyone has been concentrating so much on the startups with a little amount of money, but we believe with this, we can take you through an incubation and acceleration program that at the end of 12 or 24 months, as the case may be, that company, that firm would have reached something that it's stable. 5, 10 winners will be selected, 5 will be men, and 5 will definitely be women-led enterprises. Furthermore, it is critical that circularity be embedded in Africa's post-COVID-19 recovery plans. It is encouraging to note that circular economy has been identified as one of the key focus areas under the Africa Green Stimulus Program, a continental framework developed to support the continent's post-COVID-19 recovery in a sustainable manner. It is, however, more critical to solve the continent's liquidity crisis brought about by the pandemic to enable growth. Measures such as extension of the debt suspension service initiative to possibly end of 2022 is welcome. Reallocation of developed countries' IMF special drawing rights to developing economies to ease liquidity challenges, and a reset of the financial system to introduce new products such as social bonds, green bonds, resilient bonds are some solutions that enable the flow of finance to circular economy innovations. Coalitions such as the one we formed today create the necessary public awareness and pressure to drive the desired change. This is a much needed dialogue, and I'm very excited that this is being forged and that this relationship with the Latin America and Caribbean Circular Economy Coalition has become a reality. This is a first step and definitely not the last. I thank you for your attention and participation. Thank you. James, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Dr. Young. And indeed, we've all heard that so many times. And thank you for both the current state of play and charting some of the way ahead. Ms. Farah, let's turn to you for your reflections from the perspective of the Latin America and Caribbean on this and on the broader agenda of collaboration that emerges.
Thanks, James. And I want to echo the message from Anthony. I'm glad I'm not on mute. I'm really happy and very happy to be celebrating with all of you, with all the audience, this very important moment. This is the beginning of a long journey of cooperation between the African Alliance and the Coalition on Circular Economy from Latin America and the Caribbean. As all the panelists, the ministers have mentioned, there are many commonalities, a lot of challenges that we have in common and also opportunities. And I want to recap some of my takeaways from the panelists. 5 key messages I want to recap. First, I was very happy to hear that the idea of circular economy is not new. It is embedded in our DNA of the traditional and our indigenous culture in both Latin America and Africa. The second is we need to learn from nature. Nature doesn't produce waste. Nature regenerates itself. So the key challenge here is how can we make our economy circular? And I think Gonzalo was highlighting there how the financial sector, and Anthony has complemented how the financial sector is moving more there. And we need to size more this issue of how circularity can reduce the risk, the financial risk. How can we inject more money to scale up these very good initiatives that we have seen today? The second, as the Minister of Rwanda has highlighted as well, circular economy creates new opportunities for a green recovery. It has to be in the green recovery plans. It can generate new job opportunities, in particular jobs for young people. And just to give an example, in Latin America, we know that circular economy could create 4.8 million new jobs by 2030. So that's a great potential. The fourth message is circular economy, or everything about circular economy is related to climate change. And I really like that phrase. And yes, studies have shown that through circular economy, we could reduce by 45% the greenhouse gas emissions. that are produced by our systems of production of the products that we consume and we use, and also on the way that we are producing food. So we could reduce by there 45%. That's a great thing. And not to mention that we could also reduce by more than 80% the plastics that end up in the ocean. So that's the great potential. And the last message, my takeaway is really, I am thrilled and so happy to see in this event action, not only words, action, to see how the SMEs are already moving. Wahiro, Esther, Samuel have shown examples that are happening in both regions, and the challenge here is how to scale them up. So with this, and on behalf of the Latin American, the Caribbean Coalition on Circular Economy, I want to reemphasize our commitment to continue this South-South cooperation and this exchange of knowledge with Africa. This is, as we say, this is the beginning, and these are not only words. We are very pleased to share with you next steps and to let you know that we have already a plan to continue this exchange, this dialogue. And there are 5 areas. First, we want to work on financing circularity. And in both regions, we are starting a study on exploring financial mechanisms for circularity. We are doing this with the support of the initiative, the Global Opportunities for SDGs, Go for SDGs, and also together with UNEP-FI. These studies, we are already engaging the African Development Bank, Dalberg, we are engaging the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB Invest, and the Instituto Escuelas in Brazil. They will be key authors in developing these studies, and we want to keep this exchange between the 2 regions. The second area, we want to have more of this type of exchange, focusing on how to support countries to develop national strategies. And in this, we are imagining to have this a second dialogue, maybe bringing champions in the 2 regions that have developed national strategies on circular economy or are doing initiatives such as Chile, Colombia, South Africa, Rwanda, to give an example, and bring them together with other countries that are starting this endeavor and want to learn lessons from the countries that have already developed this. And in this, I want to highlight that we are open also to include other partners. We are in conversation also with CITRA, with the European Union, and we want to invite any other partner that is interested in having this exchange to support the development and implementation of national strategies on circular economy. The third area of cooperation, and you heard a lot today, is SMEs, small and medium enterprises, which, by the way, are the basis of our economies in both continents. So again, through Go for SDGs, we have started a cooperation with SEED, who was also supporting the organization of this side event. And with the African Alliance, we want to include more capacity development in Africa for SMEs to embrace sustainable models of circularity, and the same for Latin America. The fourth area of cooperation, we also want to expand and contribute to the global debate, the global cooperation. So in this sense, as the Minister of Rwanda already mentioned, both the Alliance and the Coalition are part of GACERE, the Global Alliance of Circular Economy and Resource Efficiency. We believe that it's very important to keep the dialogue at the 2 levels, the regional and the global, the 3, national, regional, and global. So we are part of this global alliance, and we will be very happy to also support that global dialogue, as well as we want to strengthen our cooperation with the World Circular Economy Forum. And with this, I want to highlight in particular our thank you to our great appreciation to the government of Canada and CITRA, who have invited us, the Alliance and the Coalition, to be partners of the organization of this forum. We want to highlight that we both, the Alliance and the Coalition, we stand ready. It was an honor to be working with you, and we stand ready to support the organization of the next forum. And finally, just to say, these are 5 initial areas, but all of you who are listening to and joining today, the platforms are open. We are willing to have different new members, and again, to accelerate this transition to a circular economy and scale up best practices. With this, I want to thank you all and Over to you, James. Thank you.
Thank you for those rich closing remarks and that excellent summary of some of the critical takeaways from this discussion. Nothing further from me other than to remind everyone that a recording of this conversation will be available online after this. And for those of you who are asking questions about the enterprise's profile, particularly Esther and Samuel's ventures, you can learn more and you can connect with them through the World Circular Economy Forum's networking hub. So please do use that hub and reach out to them to learn more about their current ventures and so on. And I think a number of additional helpful links have also been posted in the chat here. So do take a quick scan before you sign off. But with that, I wanted to thank everyone who's participated in making this event a success. It's been a really invigorating conversation, not least because of the heavy engagement of a very active, I won't call you an audience, but the participants in the text who've been an active part of this conversation alongside the discussants and our keynotes. Circular economy will call upon all of us to change our behavior, but it has the potential to transform all of our lives and make the world a more sustainable and inclusive place. Hopefully we can all take this message out as we close this. Thank you.